Hello and welcome to this session. Today we are going to learn about Docker file and the major objective of this video to explain you how you can use the Docker file to create the image of your Spring Boot application. So we are going to learn about what is Docker file, how you can create this file. Then using that file we are going to build and package our Spring Boot application into the Docker image. Then at last, we will publish it into the Docker Hub repository that will be global and anyone can download or pull that image from the Docker Hub repository. Then we will see what are the basic commands involved to working with the Docker, like how you can commit your or how you can push your image to the Docker Hub, how you can pull it, how you can log in, and all these things we are going to see. We are going to do using some basic commands. Then at the last, we will see what are the different ways to create the Docker image. So let's see first what is Docker file. It is just a text file with the instruction to build the image. Let me show you the file structure. If you see here, this is the Docker file which contain the certain commands or certain instruction which using which the Docker understand like what it has to perform to build the image. So this I will explain you each line like what is this command from Eclipse and all this. So here I have mentioned this. So if you see, these are the commands which Docker file will contain. Commands which we are going to use in our today's session and convert the Spring Boot app into the Docker image. Now let's go to the your workspace and create this Docker file there, and then I will explain you each line what is the purpose of each of these instruction which contain the Docker file which is there in this Docker file. If you see that I already have very simple Spring Boot application in my local workspace. I show you with this package. I don't have much classes, only I have which just I created from the Spring Slicer. You can create your project. It can be Gradle or the Maven project as per your need. So let's go just create the Docker file. So you can create the Docker file anywhere in this place, either into the source repository or even outside from this. I'm going to create outside. So let me create new, go to file, give the name Docker file. Make sure the file name must be like this. Otherwise, you can give your custom name also to this file, but at the time of running the Docker, you need to specify properly. So if you see, these are the instruction which Docker file need for our project. So I will copy it. Then I will explain you each line. What is the purpose? Let me copy and place it in the Docker file in workspace. Yes, if you see, these are the four instructions we provided to the Docker. Now, let me explain you what are these lines and what is the purpose of all these lines. So, just I need to jump into the PPT where I have documented or mentioned in a very detailed manner. Yes, if you see here, the first instruction what we are giving to the Docker, this file instruct the Docker to create the image based on the basic OpenJDK image. So, which will bundle the OpenJDK 11 with a Linux distribution. So this is the basically it used to create the or download the OpenJDK image for this project. Then we are also specifying the argument java underscore file where we mention the location of the jar file of your Spring Boot application. So if I go to the my workspace, if you see this the purpose of this line number 3 to we are specifying to the Docker to go and find the jar file of your Spring Boot application under the target folder. So for this, first you need to create the jar file of your Spring Boot application. So I will use a very simple command to create the jar file of the Spring Boot application. So I'm going to use Maven clean and install. Here, if you see, there is no target folder right now. Once this process completed, then target folder will be created, and under that target folder, there will be one jar file of your Spring Boot application. Here, the build is success. Now, if you go here, the target folder has been created. So just go open this, and if you go here, this is the jar file which is created under the target folder. Now, the major purpose of this command is like we are instructing to the Docker to go and check the jar file under the target folder. Since it is already there, it will not give any error once you run this Docker command to build the image. Next, once it find that jar file, it will copy that jar file and put it into the Docker container with the name called app.jar. Okay, so that is the purpose of copy command, copy instruction. Then finally we have the entry point which we are specifying. With the help of this, the Docker will run your Spring Boot application. Now let me jump back to the PowerPoint where I have explained in much detailed way. If you see, this file instruct the Docker to create an image based on the basic OpenJDK image, which bundle the OpenJDK 11 with Linux distribution. Next, the arg.jar file. So it will create the argument jar file and tell the Docker to copy the Spring Boot jar file specified by that argument into the app.jar within the container. Next, we have the entry point. Then Docker will start the app by calling this Java jar and the name of that jar file. Now see, these are the commands. This is the Gradle. If you are using the Gradle project to build your Spring Boot jar file, you need to run this command. Now, if you want to create the image of your Spring Boot application, then for that purpose, you need this command docker space build space, and you need to specify the path of the folder in which the Docker file is present. So let me go and go to the workspace. So what I mean that I need to run one command. So let's first go into some class. See, I need this Docker build and the location or the path where I have kept my Docker file. Under this main location, downloads under Docker. So you need to specify the root file, or you can just if you don't want to specify the root file, you can give this dot symbol. If you don't want to specify the complete path here, then you can give the dot. But there is a condition. Let me show you. You don't allow to give always this dot instead of the correct path. There is a one limitation for that. You must be under that folder. If you see here, I already under this Docker folder, right? Under this Docker folder, I have this Docker file. If you see here, under the downloads Docker, and then I have directly have the file here. So already I am in the parent folder, so I can give this command docker build and dot. Now let me type the command docker build and this dot symbol. You see here I have typed this docker build dot. But before typing this command or before pressing the enter after typing this command, you make sure that you must have the Docker in your system and it must be in the running state. So I am using the window. If you see, I already have this Docker desktop application and it is running in my local system. And if you see here, I already created some image which is listed here. Total three are there. Three images are there already, and it is running in state. Now let me go and create one more image. If I press enter, then it will start creating the image for me for this Spring Boot application. So it takes some time, not more than 1 to 2 minutes. So it is in progress to creating the image. out of our Spring Boot application. Yes, so it's completed. It created the image. And one more thing, if you want to give some name to your Docker image, then what you need to do, you just have to mention the name. For me, let's say I'm going to give some name like sample Docker project, sample Docker project. Okay, so this is the name, and even if you want to give the tag, you need to just to find out it is latest or the older or any type of the version you want to specify, then you need to keep the colon like this and keep the name. Let me give like latest. So this will be considered as a latest image for our reference. In future, if I wanted to download, if somebody wanted to pull the image with the this name sample Docker project, then it can understand that this is the latest image. So that is the a major purpose of this tag. Then you need to give the space and type dot, basically the path of the Docker file. So then press on enter. Okay, so it is giving the problem. So if you are specifying the in Docker name image or the tag name, you need to give one more thing like -t. Okay, then press enter now. Okay, again it's giving the problem. Let me correct it. I think that there is a double space here. So yeah, now press enter. Okay, one more time. Okay, the problem is like if you see the repository name must be in lowercase. This is also a very good point. I have given the camel case name for the image. So you it is mandatory that you must provide the name in all the lowercase. So I will give you the reason why it is asking for always lowercase in the latter part. Let me first give some other name sample, delete it, Docker build sample Docker project. Okay, all are in the small letter. Now give the colon and tag name. I have given the latest space, the location of the Docker file. Right now I already in the current location, so I will give the dot. Now if you press enter, it will start creating the image. Okay, again I made make a one mistake here. If you see, I missed that tag, means T hyphen T. You need to specify the hyphen T if you are using the image name and the tag name. Now, if you see, it started building the image for you. The very first step, it loading the metadata. Okay, it's going very fast. Basically, it is trying to pull the image for your JRE, okay, from the global repository. Then next step is the copy the target jar file. If you see this one, copy the jar file from where you already specify the location. This one under the target. Okay, from here it will try to find that jar. Once it get the jar, then it convert into the it change the rename it basically to the app.jar. Okay, then finally it exporting to the image. This jar file is getting exported to the image, and finally at the last it write the image. Okay, this is the image has been created. Once it is done, then it providing the name to that image what you have specified like sample Docker project clone latest. So with this name, your image has been created in your local Docker desktop. You even you can view in the local Docker desktop. So in order to check whether the image has been created or not, just type one more command Docker images and ls list. Okay, this is the command. Let me highlight docker images list. Press enter. Okay, it's not coming here. Let me go and see in the this file. So it is already appear here sample docker project image under the desktop docker desktop application. So if you see it is created 14 minutes ago. So this one is the latest. And if you want to run this image also in your desktop docker, then just you press this run button. So it will start run in your system, this image. Okay, let me show you how it will appear once you click on run button. Now if you now here all the logs will be appear like how the Spring Boot startup. If you see here, it's coming up. It's getting started in your Docker desktop application, your Spring Boot application. So it will take some time and it will start running in your system here. If you read this command, it is similar command which similar logs which published when you run in your IDs like work, IntelliJ or Eclipse. See at the Tomcat started port number 8080, started the Docker application in this seconds. So it started running in your Docker desktop. These all things I have documented here. I have mentioned here all the commands what I am going to use. The first we saw Docker build and the path of the folder in which Docker file is present. So it is used to build the image from the Docker file. Then we saw the Docker -t. You need to give the Docker username and the custom image name. So I will explain you what is this Docker username here. Now we already saw this image has been created here in this in your local system for your Spring Boot application with the name of sample Docker project. Now the next step we wanted to push it into the Docker Hub repository. So for that purpose, you must have your one Docker account. Already I have created my own account. Okay, in the Docker Hub, you see this is the URL. So here, what you need to do, you need to use this command first. Let me here Docker login command to log in from the CLI. Okay, or from the terminal. Then use the Docker push image name to publish the image in the Docker Hub repository. Okay, let me go and log in to my Docker Hub from the terminal. So this is the terminal. So I will type Docker login. You see Docker login. Once you type and once you press the enter, it will ask your credentials. See, it is authenticating with the existing credentials because already earlier already I have logged in. So I think it maintains the session and it knows what is my valid credential. If you log in for the first time, it will ask you the username and the password. So once you log in, you need to use the command docker push, okay, and name of the image. So I have created the image with name sample docker project. Let me copy it. Sample docker project. Sample docker project. Now once you enter this and and press enter, you see it started pushing, but it gives some error message like denied, access is denied, the request access to resources denied. So here it is the main point. You need to mention the username as well. Then only it will able to push your Docker image. Where you need to provide the image name in your Docker, where you need to provide the username in your Docker image. So if you go here in this PPT, I have mentioned you need to when you are building that image and you know you need to publish or push it into the Docker Hub repository. Okay, then you must create with the Docker username and after that slash whatever the name you wanted to provide and the custom name. Okay, and tag with the space and directory of the Docker file. So let me show you what I am trying to explain here. Let's try to build a new image with different name. Okay, so I will use the same command docker build, and here you need to give the username of your Docker help repository. So this is my username. Okay, first username you need to specify. If you go here, this is my username here. Same username you need to specify here. Then forward slash, um, then this slash, and give the name whatever you want to give. Let's say sample Docker project, and I will change the tag name this time. I will give the v1. Okay, to specify the version space and dot. Again, I missed one more thing. You need to specify hyphen t here if you are giving the image name. So press enter. It has again started building the image for you, and whatever the instruction it is process doing in this process, it is present in this log in this console. You can read and understand. I think it is created. If you see writing the image, then it provided the name to that image. If you want to see, just go to your Docker this desktop. It already updated with the tag v1. Okay. Now I'm going to push it into the Docker repository, my Docker repository, Docker Hub. I will give Docker push and the name of that image with the username. Okay. So what sample Docker project, and make sure this all must be in the lowercase in. Okay. And I will press enter. It's giving tag does not exist. Okay. So I need to specify the tag name as well because already one more exists with the same name. Keep v1. Started preparing that and it pushing into the Docker Hub. Once it completed, I will show you whether it has been pushed or not. All right, it has been pushed. Let me go and verify in the Docker Hub. So if you refresh this page, it will appear in this list. Yes, if you see, last post a few seconds ago with this name, sample Docker project. So it is successfully pushed and created the image in your hub.docker.com. Now if you want to pull it again, then another we have the command docker pull and the name of the image to pull the image from the Docker Hub. So these are the commands which is required to work with the Docker and to create the image from the Docker. Next, we have some other ways to create the Docker image. Right now, what I explained the traditional way of creating the Docker image. Okay, and it has some drawback. This page where it is explained you what is the drawback and all. If you want, you can go through this link. I will attach in the description. Okay, so it mentioned the traditional Docker build. This is the command which I explained you in this tutorial. Another way of creating the image is like build packs, and one more is there, layered jar. So these are the latest ways of creating the image. Maybe I will create a new tutorial for this, or you can use it. Let me summarize whatever we have covered today. We learned what is Docker file. We saw how to create the Docker file. Then we learn how to build or package the Spring Boot Up app in the Docker image. I have also showed you how to publish the Spring Boot app image to the Docker Hub. Then we have some basic commands to play with the Docker and to create the image and publish it. And next we saw what are the ways to create the Docker image. So these are the things which we covered. So thank you so much for watching this video, and bye.